I have a golden retriever. I absolutely love my dog, but my neighbor is one of those creepy old men who always just have to be all up in your business. Well, I was walking my golden retriever down the road and here he comes again, having to touch my dog with his nasty paws. Ew. And by the way, I can't exaggerate how much this guy creeps me out. One time, I found him on my camera in my backyard trying to steal my dog away when this happened to him.
Hey guys, I'm 32 and facing a dilemma and I need to get this off my chest. I figured this would be the best place to turn to because this situation is getting crazy and stressful. So, allow me to give you all some background info. This is going to be a long one, so I'm a dog lover. I have a beautiful golden retriever who I absolutely adore. I'm very protective of her too. She's a super friendly dog, and as beautiful as she is, she attracts a lot of attention when I take her on walks around the neighborhood or just take her to the park. Most people are friendly and respectful. They will pet her or say hello to her, maybe chat with me about dogs a bit if they're enthusiasts like me, and then they're just on their merry way. But my next-door neighbor, Greg, he takes the dog's fascination to an absolute whole new level. Firstly, I don't even like to call Greg a dog person because frankly, he doesn't earn the title. He neglects his animals and lets them run around the neighborhood terrorizing everyone and everything. They're clearly starved for attention, but if you're remotely nice to his dogs, they won't leave you alone. I feel bad for them. One from my other neighbors called animal control on Greg once, but nothing ever came of the accusation, and his dogs continued to run around the neighborhood without their leashes, barking and getting into other people's belongings at all hours of the night. Greg does appear to love his animals, but he seems a bit off in the head. I don't mean to be disparaging towards people with mental illness, but Greg seems like he's incapable of properly taking care of his dogs, no matter how much he actually may love them. When I first moved into the neighborhood and started taking my golden retriever on walks around the block, most of the reactions I received were fairly respectful and normal. Greg seemed slightly off right from the beginning, but he was nice enough and, well, petted my dog and walked away. And then he started showing up to greet my dog every time I went on a walk. I'd be outside for not even a minute and Greg would come out of his house and start talking to my dog. He wouldn't even address me. I would just stand there awkwardly. It messed with my exercise and my dog's exercise too. After this happened enough times, I finally told Greg off. I was as polite as could be, but I told him I was pressed for time and did not want to have this same interaction every single time I went for a walk. He immediately became defensive and combative, telling me if I did not want people to admire my dog, I should not have one. I told him I should have a right to walk my dog around the neighborhood without having to spend half an hour standing there watching him pet my animal. His response was that we live in a free country, and he's not going to listen to me because I'm not his boss. I'm not a big fan of confrontation, especially being a petite and mousy female up against a burly and unhinged-looking middle-aged man like Greg. After this awkward encounter, I started taking my dog to the park for walks. I missed the convenience of walking around my own neighborhood, but it was worth it to avoid the awkwardness of Greg. After a few trips to the park, I thought this situation had blown over, and Greg would just forget all about our brief little spat. Well, I was mistaken. Probably the 5th or 6th time I took my dog to the park after the argument with Greg. I pulled into the parking area and noticed what looked like Greg's Ford Taurus. I thought surely it wasn't him and tried to put it out of my mind, but sure enough, not 30 seconds after I started walking my golden retriever, Greg shows up seemingly from out of nowhere. It's like he had been waiting on the bushes or something. I was freaked out. I asked him why he was at the park talking to my dog, and his explanation was that it was simply a coincidence. He said he was already at the park and said he had every right to be looking at my dog. I told him he needs to back off. And he said I better, quote, learned something about United States law. He defended his right to do everything that he did. Here's the thing. Greg was right. I had no proof of any illegal activity from Greg. He was annoying and creepy and unsettling, but none of those things are illegal in the United States. After seeing Greg at the park a second time, I decided to start taking my dog on walks at a park in another city 30 minutes away. The harassment stopped there, but it did not stop at home. The story gets weirder and weirder from here. I'm afraid to say, a few weeks after my slight confrontation with Greg at the park, I was having a family cookout at my house. I decided to let my dog out. She had her leash, and frankly, my golden retriever is so sweet and harmless, she never causes a problem with other neighbors or other pets. So I wasn't thinking of what could go wrong when I let her out of the house. I had a few drinks at the cookout, and I just wanted my dog to get some playtime. I got back to the festivities of the cookout and kept drinking and lost track of where my dog was. I got to the party attendees to start helping me look for her. Guess where we found her? I looked in my front yard and saw my dog sitting with Greg on his porch. She looked scared, but he had cornered her and was petting her rather aggressively. I ran up to his porch and told him in no uncertain terms that he, was never to touch my dog ever again. Of course, he shrugged his shoulders and had an excuse and a bad attitude like he always did. But I wasn't in the mood. I told him to back off, and he told me to get off his property. I flipped him off and went back home. Obviously, that was an unpleasant and uncomfortable confrontation I wish I could have avoided. But Greg had crossed the line with me far too many times, and I was tired of him messing around with my dog. I could not figure out why this guy in his 40s had such a fixation on my pet, when he has two of his own he just ignores all the time. Unfortunately, things just continued to escalate after that incident, and it all led up to why I'm actually typing this post today. I woke up one day, tired of wasting my gas making the drive to a whole other city just to walk my dog. So I got up and got dressed, took my dog for a walk through my neighborhood for the first time in quite a while. It seems like I even caught Greg off guard because I was able to make it through my whole neighborhood without getting noticed. And then, everything went wrong when I was coming back. As soon as Greg's house entered my view, it seemed like Greg frantically ran out of his house. He stood on the sidewalk staring right at me and my dog, and my heart started pounding. But I wanted to be brave and decided to keep walking towards my house as if Greg wasn't even there. I'm desperately avoiding eye contact with Greg at this point, but I can't help but notice the dead look in his eyes as he stood there. He was totally expressionless, like Jeffrey Dahmer or a zombie staring at my dog. I was getting the creeps. I got closer to Greg and he suddenly lunged towards me and grabbed my animal. I was in such shock I started screaming. I didn't know what to do. He ran to his porch and just sat there smothering my dog with kisses and hugs, and he wasn't mistreating her, but I could tell she was scared. I demanded Greg returns my dog and he flipped me off. I could not believe the audacity. Well, that's the day I called the police. I did it. I called the police that day. But by the time the cops showed up in my neighborhood, Greg had already returned my dog, and he pleaded ignorance and completely lied to the police about everything. Surprisingly, the cops sided with him. I think they just didn't care enough to investigate a report of a creepy guy who was obsessed with a neighbor's dog. The cops told me to call them if I ever got any proof of Greg breaking the law, and I got the vibe that they didn't want to bother me again. As if all that wasn't enough to make my life an absolute living hell, this situation with Greg and my dog recently reached a boiling point. To give some background info, I have an older brother named Billy. Billy's a police officer and a dog trainer. He's got two beautiful dogs and they're both big boys, a husky and a German shepherd, both weighing in at 120 pounds. They're in great shape and both could take down most men. My dog's a sweetheart who could not hurt a fly, but Those two have the capacity to inflict great pain, and yeah, they're great dogs, but they don't take kindly to intruders, as you'll see. My brother had been in town visiting and decided to leave his dogs in my backyard while we're both out. Both of his dogs got along great with my golden retriever, so I wasn't worried about anything. I'd been a little distracted from work stress, so I momentarily forgot my feud with Greg. Sure enough, Greg tried to steal my dog while I was gone. I wish I could say I was surprised, but I had a feeling for a while that this would be what it came to. What Greg did not account for was two very large, very powerful dogs who would also be in the yard. It was all caught on my camera. Greg was severely mauled by Billy's dog, especially the canine German Shepherd. Greg tried fighting off the dogs with a stick, but he hurt them both. But he was still no match for them at the end. My golden retriever just sat there and watched while my brother's dogs absolutely tore Greg to pieces. My brother and I got home in just enough time to save Greg. Billy is the only person those two dogs will listen to, so once they got the word, well, they stopped biting Greg. Greg laid there crying out in pain in my yard, and my brother had heard all about this guy from all along on all the phone calls where I had vented about him. So I knew exactly what to do with Greg. Billy put him in handcuffs and called the local authorities, and Greg was arrested and charged with trespassing, animal cruelty, and assaulting an officer since, Billy's canine German Shepherd is technically a police officer. I don't know how, but Greg was able to bond out of jail very quickly, and the first thing he tried to do was sue me. The video footage of Greg's humiliating encounter with the dogs had gone absolutely viral. Some of you reading this post might have even seen it on a website. It is pretty brutal, though. Greg was obviously grasping at straws. After all this, because he sued me for pain and suffering and even mental anguish, as well as animal cruelty. How could he try to sue me for animal cruelty when he's the one who got caught trying to kidnap an animal? Of course. Greg was humiliated even further when we went to court, and yes, that's right. We actually had to go to small claims court for this bogus legal summons Greg had filed on his own. The judge actually laughed so hard that she had tears in her eyes. She told Greg to stop wasting everyone's time and actually advised that he would be better off moving from the neighborhood instead of trying to mess with me and my dog again. Greg's reputation in the area is quite poor at this point, because everybody in town has seen the footage and the mugshots from the incident with the dogs. He recently moved out of the neighborhood, and although I do feel a greater sense of relief from that, I also have this weird feeling in my gut as if this situation isn't entirely over. Yeah, Greg might have left the neighborhood, but I don't think he's the type to forget about this kind of stuff. And as crazy as this may seem, I'm worried I might have to been, too harsh on him. Maybe I should not have pressed all the charges on him. I hope I don't regret this. What do you guys think? What would you do? What is up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Today's story is wild. I could not even imagine having such a neighbor of a nightmare. I mean, what a weirdo. How about taking no for an answer? Alright guys, we're going to check out update number 1. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe for daily videos so you never miss an update. And let's jump into update number 1. Hey everyone, I'm back. Thanks to everybody who read my post and allowed me to vent and get this off my chest. As you can imagine, this has all been very stressful for me, so I appreciate anybody who gave me good advice or words of support. That being said, I truly wish I could tell you that this was all subsided, but I don't think it has. It's possible I'm just being paranoid because frankly, I'm a little traumatized from all the drama with Greg. Months of being on guard and looking behind my shoulder every time I'm outside of the house or with my dog have taken a huge mental toll on me. So, it's possible, yes, I'm overreacting. That's why I'm here today, because I need some more advice on a recent scenario. So, For about 2 weeks after Greg packed up his things and left the neighborhood, there was a complete radio silence. I loved the peace and quiet, and although I had a slight sense of dread in my gut the entire time, I tried to ignore it and live my life freely as if Greg had never existed. I was finally starting to sleep better and take my dog on neighborhood walks more than when, these strange messages started coming. I've been getting anonymous messages on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. I'll block one account and there's a new account messaging me the very next day. While there haven't been any explicit threats yet, there have been a lot of vaguely threatening stuff like telling me to watch my back and telling me to be careful where I take my dog, and to make matters even more weird, there's no way for anybody to find me on Twitter and Instagram. My Facebook is obvious, sure, it's my first and last name, which I won't reveal here, but even a lot of my close friends in real life don't even know my Twitter and Instagram handles. So the fact that I'm getting harassed there is so weird. This has to be someone who knows me very well. Greg should not know a lot about my past, but he is the obsessive type. I'm sure he's keeping tabs on me somehow, and social media, yeah, it's the easiest way. The messages just keep coming and coming at all hours of the day and night, and I finally had to turn off notifications as the messages got more frequent and invasive. I filed a police report, but they were dismissive about it. I told them about my history with Greg, and the cops laughed about the footage of Greg being attacked by dogs when I reminded them, but they didn't seem too concerned about the online harassment. The police gave me a call today and told me they can't figure out where the messages are coming from because the person is using technology to hide their location. I think it's Greg, but I almost hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping it's just a troll who became familiar with the story and wanted to mess with me, but I don't know. Update number 2. Gosh, the craziest thing just happened. I'm so shaken and it feels like no one cares and I have nowhere left to turn, so I'm back with yet another update and I want to know what you all think about this one. If you're keeping up and reading this far, you'll know last time I was getting harassed via social media. The police had informed me there was nothing that they could do. Well, I'm running into that same predicament here, but it's even scarier than Facebook and Twitter messages. I was at work the other day and I was working late. It's busy season at my job, and while I won't reveal what I do for fear of privacy concerns, I'm in a high productivity role and it's a lot expected of me. I've been the first person to show up and the last person to leave work for a little while, and I guess Greg noticed this at some point. That's right, I was leaving work late one night and I was one last car in the parking lot. I don't know how he found me, I don't know if he just happened to be driving by and saw my car, but I drive a common car that one could see multiple times anytime that they leave the house. He shouldn't have known or even had any way to know where I work, but he definitely singled out the vehicle because he knew I work there. I don't have proof, but I know it. Greg was waiting for me when I left. I immediately reached for the pepper spray in my purse and told him to get away from my car. I asked him why he was at my workplace and threatened to call the cops on him. He told me it was a public building and he had every right to be there. He starts inching closer to me and I told him to back off. He said he was not going to hurt me. Greg told me he wants to apologize for all that's happened to me, and me apologize to him? After all the trouble he's caused me? I told him I refuse to apologize and that he simply needs to leave. He told me he wasn't going to leave me alone until I apologized, and he even asked me to buy his own golden retriever. I could not believe the craziness I was hearing. I pulled out my phone and began to call the police, and Greg was scared. He ran away. I filed a police report of the harassment, but here's the issue. There's no camera footage of where I park at work. There's no record of Greg even being on the property. The police acted like I was the crazy one for even bringing it up. So guys,
What should I do?
Update number 3. Hey guys, just another quick update. I've got some good news to share. And I truly hope this is the last update I'll have to share with you guys. It's beginning to look like Greg was scared off for good after our last interaction. I'm sure he stuck through around the area and scoped things out, and I'm sure he knows I called the police on him. And while I hope he doesn't know the police did absolutely nothing to help me that day, I hope just the presence of police was enough to get him back off for a bit. After all, the whole community already knows who he is, and if you've been reading so far, you know he was forced out of the neighborhood already. The harassing communications on social media have ceased, and I haven't had any other scary encounters at work. This might not mean anything, but I have hope that Greg has backed off. If anything, he's not stupid enough to go back to my workplace after I already filed a police report on him. For all he knows, he needs to lay low because they're looking for him. Even if they aren't out there actively searching, I've been dating a wonderful younger man named Reginald. He's respectful, hardworking, and extremely sweet. He recently came into my life and he's done wonders to help take out my mind from all the drama with Greg and his obsession with my dog. I explained the Greg situation to him, and a lot of men would be scared off by the prospect of a crazy guy following your girlfriend around trying to get her dog. But Reginald didn't care. He was supportive and told me if Greg ever tried to mess with us again, he would protect me. For the first time in a while, I felt secure and comfortable in my life, and that's all thanks to Reginald. We've realized what we really needed most in our lives right now was a change of scenery. So, as I type this update, I'm in the process of finalizing the booking for me and Reginald's vacation. My golden retriever will be traveling with us too. So she'll be in good hands, and I won't have to worry about Greg trying to mess with my baby girl. Update number 4. Hey guys, greetings again. I had so hoped I would not need to give another update, but I have to get this off my chest. I'm beginning to think I'm going to need professional therapy to get over this crap with Greg. As I type this, I'm on vacation with my new boyfriend Reginald, who, by the way, I'm starting to fall in love with. We're vacationing in a beautiful area, and my lovely golden retriever's with me. Everything should be perfect, right? It should be, but here's the part that makes me seem crazy and paranoid. I keep seeing Greg everywhere we go. Theoretically, Greg should have absolutely no way of knowing I'm even on vacation, let alone where I went to visit. But after all that's happened with this guy, I would not put anything past him. Obviously, he has nothing better to do than to dwell and stew on all this drama, and I'm sure he hates me with an absolute passion. My boyfriend Reginald keeps telling me to just try to calm down and relax and forget about the guy, at the very least while we're on vacation. I know he's probably right, but I can't get over it. First, we got off the plane at the airport and I saw a guy who looked like Greg wearing a fake mustache. He seemed to be pretending to read a magazine in the airport terminal, and I caught him glancing at me several times. I just put it out of my head and focused on the vacation. Then, me and Reginald went to a restaurant. First place we eat on this vacation after checking into the hotel, and we're seated next to the window. I kept seeing the same mustache man walking past us, glancing into the window. This guy from the airport would walk past the window, cycle back around, and repeat the process over and over again. It was so creepy. I got distracted from everything and told Reginald I want to leave, but he kept telling me to calm down. So, after we finished eating, me and Reginald went back to the hotel to freshen up and relax a bit after the flight. I saw this Greg look-alike mustache man sitting in the hotel lobby pretending to read a newspaper again. I know I sound crazy, and maybe this guy is a total stranger, who is actually just reading a newspaper, but he kept glancing at me over and over as me and Reginald walked to the elevator. Once again, Reginald was dismissive and kept telling me to calm down. Guys, I thought taking a vacation would be good for my head, but it seems like everywhere I go, I see Greg. I don't want to believe it's actually him. I don't think it is. I think I need professional help. Update number 5. This is the final post by OP. I'm back again, and I can safely say with certainty this will be the final update because I'm about to tell you something crazy. Turns out, my suspicions were right. I was not being crazy or overreacting at all. After I posted the last update, later that evening, me and Greg found a late-night bar and grill that lets patrons take their dogs inside while they drink and eat. I thought this sounded like a great experience for my golden retriever, and it would give me and Greg a chance to look at all the other dogs as well. While me and Greg and my dog were sitting in the restaurant trying to have a good time, my jaw dropped as I saw who walked in front of our table. Greg was there. He had ditched the fake mustache and the costume and was wearing his regular street clothing. He stood there staring at me and Reginald. I was so shocked my jaw dropped and my food fell out of my mouth back onto the plate. Reginald immediately asked me if this was the guy I had been freaking out about, and Greg told Reginald to shut his trap. Greg then demanded we both apologize to him for getting him kicked out of his house. Okay, at this point, people in the restaurant were just staring at our entire table as Greg made the biggest scene you could imagine. I also had a few drinks and I just lost it. I railed into Greg for everything he's done to me, every creepy, red flag, harassing moment. I put it out in the open. I could tell he was humiliated after I screamed at him, and without even saying a word, Greg grabbed my golden retriever and made a run for the door. Well, we're on vacation in a tourist area with a lot of local police, so it did not take long for the cops to tackle him and get my dog back. The restaurant and numerous local businesses had footages of every second of the incident from all angles. Greg was caught, red-handed, with no excuse or alibi for once. Since Greg was already on probation when he chose to leave the state to follow me and attempt to steal my dog, he was in quite a bit of hot water for his actions legally. Well, as I type this, Greg, he's in prison. When the police searched his apartment, they found documentation to back up all the harassment I reported. And finally, turns out, Greg even installed a keyboard logger on all my computer devices so that, well, he knew my every login and my every move and my every password. Me and Reginald are still together, and after all the drama with Greg and dealing with the police and the public attention from everything, we just both decided we needed a change of scenery, more permanent than a vacation. We moved to Indiana together with my beautiful golden retriever, and we're having a happy life and working on having children. By the time Greg gets out of jail, he won't be able to find us in the middle of Indiana. I don't even think about him anymore, to be honest. I just wanted to give you all an update to let you know things worked out.
Guys, this was one of those stories that was just so insane. I mean, first of all, just imagine having a neighbor like this who is basically crazy, and he's a stalker, has red flags left and right, but the one single fact that scares the crap out of me is the fact that this guy would just go ahead, book a vacation, just so he could bump in to OP and create another massive dilemma. I want to know from you guys, how would you even go about handling this situation? Say for instance you live there and you simply can't even take your dog on a walk. I mean, it was ridiculous. And not to mention how creepy he is. I mean, it's just a good thing he is in prison. And yeah, OP and her significant other moved away to Indiana and everything seems good, but It makes me think, what could have happened if, well, Greg never got caught for what he did? Alright guys, that's going to wrap up today's video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for more daily videos, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.